Hans Zimmer, and I try to impossible to do things into the camera. Sometimes they make me do interviews, and I'm really bad at that.
Hans Zimmer was born in Germany. His father died when he was 6, and he found music to be his one form of escape. When he was a teenager, he went to a private music school in the UK.
Hans would begin his music career playing keyboards and synthesizers for such bands as The Bugles in 1977 and the Italian new wave band Charisma shortly after.
One of the more popular songs he played in was Video Killed the Radio Star in 1979. He later moved on to writing music scores for movies in the very unique and distinctive style of electronic orchestra.
The first movie he wrote a solo score for was Double Exposure in 1982. His career took a huge turning point when his score for Rain Man in 1988 earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Score.
He moved on to write scores for many popular movies, like Lion King. Pirates of the Caribbean. Inception.
Hans Zimmer has also composed some music in video games, such as Modern Warfare 2, and Crysis 2.
Hans Zimmer has also received many awards, including the Golden Globe Award for the movie The Lion King and the World Soundtrack Award for the movie Inception.
For those of you who haven't been listening for the last 3 minutes and 16 seconds, Hans Zimmer is a German-born composer who is most famous for his integration of electronic music technology into the more traditional class orchestra.
Hans Zimmer is a master of the orchestra, but what exactly is the orchestra, and where does it come from?
The orchestra is described as a sizable instrument ensemble that contains sections of string, brass, woodwind, and percussion instruments. True progress in the modern orchestra occurred in the Baroque era of the 1600s. Prior to the 1600s, when musicians got together to play, they just used whatever instrument was around. In the 1600s, Italian composer Claudio Monteverdi was the first composer to choose exactly what instrument he wanted to play for his opera Orfeo. It had a total of 40 instruments. By the 1700s, the violin family played a more prominent role, while the keyboard was still the main leader of the orchestra. For example, Johann Sebastian Bach would often conduct from where he sat, at his organ or his harpsichord. By the time of Beethoven and Haydn, the 1800s, the viols had become more important than ever, even surpassing the keyboard instruments. It marked the beginning of composers writing specifically for an instrument, and the beginning of composers becoming more adventurous in the contrasting of the different instruments. By the late 1800s, innovations in instrument and instrumental technology would allow orchestras to grow to sizes that we even see today. The integration of electronic components into the classic orchestra, basically what Hans Zimmer does, has allowed for a new generation of music to occur. Today, we can see how the orchestra is used in entertainment all around us. We also see how the orchestra has been used to effectively display the different colors of instruments that we have available.
Hans Zimmer is most famous for his integration of electronic music into the classical genre. But what exactly is electronic music?
You know what, Kacper? That is a great question. But what exactly is electronic music? Well, electronic music is the use of electric instrumentation and technology to synthesize or manipulate sound. Electronic music began around the start of the 20th century when composers wanted to use the newly emerging technologies for music. In 1897, Thaddeus Cahill developed the telharmonium. The telharmonium was the first instrument to produce sound electronically. When a note is played on its keyboard, it sends an electric signal through the wires and the note was heard from speakers. Because the telharmonium required the technical use of a regular piano to send electricity, it is an electromechanical instrument. The first purely electronic instrument was the theremin, which was invented in 1919 by Russian physicist Leon Theremin. After adapting to the new electronic instruments, the 20s and 30s were times when they were used in compositions. In the 40s and 50s, new electronic music techniques were being introduced. One such technique is musique concrète, or concrete music, developed in Paris in 1948 by composer and broadcaster Pierre Schaeffer. Developed in Paris in 1948 by composer and broadcaster Pierre Schaeffer, musique concrète is composing music using recorded sounds as raw material. The first piece of musique concrète was Pierre Schaeffer's Étude au chemin de fer. It used recordings of train noises. This piece was played through Schaeffer's studio, Studio Desai, which was built in 1942 and was the first ever electronic music studio. Later on, throughout the century, more electronic studios were being built, and the popularity of electronic music increased as bands such as the Beatles began to use them. Today, it is an important part of most modern music throughout the world. You know, like your dubstep and your autotune, you know? Like stereos or T-Pain. More than just using electronic instruments, technology is used to distort and, you know, make things sound different. Like
this. I'm trying to talk, but it's making my voice sound really weird and
that's how it's used now. This is how electronic music, this form of how electronic music is used now.